This is Charlotte Bergmann, your host for Political Talk with Charlotte. Thank you for joining me today. Many of you saw the notification about what our topic's going to be about. Just recently, there were two military pilots and the crew member that was, well, one military pilot and a crew member that was shot down while flying over Iran. And the military, the president, and all of the leaders in our administration, our top leaders, put every effort to make sure that those people were saved. And the basis of it was this: we leave no one behind. By the same token, as we talk about our veterans, they should not be left behind either. So we have as our guest the wife of one of the veterans, and I left his name off intentionally, and she wants to bring his name up. I certainly would allow her to do that. But right now, my phone would ring now, of course, and it is spam. Okay, I am the conservative voice for Christian and constitutional values. Again, I am Charlotte Bergmann, the host of Political Talk with Charlotte. I'm looking forward to a great show today. I am. I want to remind you, though, that if you have not already voted, get out to vote. April 15th, which was yesterday, was the start of early voting, and that will continue until April 30th, 2026. And that early voting will occur in time for the completion of this election for the Tuesday, May 5th, state and county primary election. If you're happy about leadership, if you feel after listening to my guest change, if you feel that our leadership is doing a great job, then yes, stay at home. Don't go out and vote. But if you feel that our veterans need more support, that there are things that could be done in our community to make life better for those people who put their all on the line to protect us, get out and vote. Know who you're voting for and get out to vote. If you're new to this channel, leave a message or maybe subscribe to my channel on YouTube and or Rumble or Twitter. Help us to grow, to reach many, many people. Want you to know that I love you very much. I appreciate you. This show would be nothing without you checking in and viewing the show and sharing the show. Please comment, share my videos, leave an emoji or a like or whatever you want to do. This is going to help to break the shadow banning that we're currently under. Many of you are familiar with my book, The Last Trumpet in the Battle for America. What are you waiting on? If you had not read my book, go out and get your copy. Let's save America. And this battle also includes saving Memphis. So sit back, get your popcorn, your Kool-Aid, and enjoy the show. Now, I have as my guest, and she is in the green room right now, but let's bring her on. Change. Hi, Change.
Today, Charlotte.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank
How
you.
are you?
I'm grateful, Charlotte. Thank you for having me. Thank you for making the difference that you're making in our community.
Listen, I don't know exactly what you're going through. I want you to share that with my audience, but I know what homelessness is about. And I understand you're homeless right now. So you
Correct.
want to talk to my audience and tell them what's going on. But before you get started, you also have an issue pertaining to your husband. Your husband apparently is suffering. Is he suffering from some form of PSTD?
He is not. My husband is suffering at the hand of some fiduciary who is not being responsible. That's
Oh, okay. We're going to get into that. We've got a couple of people who have joined the show. We have Patrick. Patrick, thank you for joining the show. And I want you to meet Change because she's going to help to make a change. And we have Noni, who has joined the show. Thank you, both of you, for joining the show. Now, Change, you have as your name AHOHD of ECHAD. All right, explain that and explain what you are a fiduciary of.
Uh, AHOHD is the Autochthonous House of Hamilton Doty of ECOD. My husband and I are more fiduciary to one another than the traditional sense of wife. We have an allegiance that none breaks, and this situation is just a test of that. My husband and I are second generation in a marital agreement between Hamiltons and Doty. So this ACOD of ECOD is that house, and we continue that relationship because we know that those are pivotal relationships. I am the niece of a man by the name of George Mormon, excuse me, Square Mormon. George Mormon is his father, and he is responsible for the 1960s tent cities that were in Tennessee and Somerville, Rossville area when individuals were unhoused, if you will, because of their choice to participate in voting or other political things. He thought that it was important that people be able to make autonomous decisions, to have agency over their life. And if that meant they would lose real estate, he was going to provide an alternative. Although a tent is not a home, it is still a place where you can be if you choose to be a person who stands in your own integrity. So he made that available. Uh, my husband is an Air Force veteran. He joined the Air Force when he was 18 years old, and he served and was discharged honorably. He went on to work in aviation mechanics for 40 years and retired without a plane falling out of the sky with his name on it, without a door falling off with his name on it, without a plane of anybody injured or harmed. So he took his responsibilities in aviation serious. He did not cut corners because someone thought it might be more efficient. He just worked that way because he was born in that honor. He retired, he returned to Memphis, and there were plans for building because he had already worked for others. So he served in the Army, he worked in Boeing in the administration, and then he decided to come back home and do what his father had instructed him to do for family. That return was beautiful, and it became marked with a brain injury. My husband suffered a stroke on January 14th of 2024.
A stroke.
And the stroke required surgery because he had an absence of blood flow into particular areas of his brain. So it required that they go in and open up those spaces, and those doctors did a fantastic job, got those spaces open. My husband went through recuperation, rehabilitation, and this was January 14th, by April of 2024, he was walking without the aid of a walker. So the recovery was good. He's very strong and determined. But that period of stroke and recovery was not honored by the VA. The VA has already rules in place because they say no veteran, no soldier is left behind. That's what each soldier teaches. That's the loyalty they pledge to one another. So the administration, the government has already provided that no soldier is left behind. There are already provisions in place in the 38 USC code. However, when those rules and administrations were put into place, most of them pre-1970, people lived different. Families were together, people were connected. So systems don't have the kind of checks and balances that 2026 could benefit from. So that's where change is going to come in and help a lot of people. But as it stands, the way it's set up, when my husband had that injury, no one from the VA or the VBA came over and said, "Thank you for your service, veteran. Here is the next step for your recovery." When he had the second stroke, intubation, hospitalization, rehabilitation, lasting more than 21 days. No social workers showed up the second time. When he had the third, no one showed up. He is now currently institutionalized unnecessarily because no one showed up for a fallen veteran. Those benefits were never paid because no one showed up to me as a caregiver providing any aid and attendance, because those people that I worked with rescinded a telework agreement when they had an opportunity. Our house became financially destitute. It's what will happen when there is no earning coming in. I am an unpaid caregiver. My husband required 24/7 care. So where would money come in except from those agencies and fiduciaries that owe the money? That didn't happen over a window of 26 months. So when my husband had a fall because there were no lights and he is new to walking, he was bedridden for 6 months. So this time he's new to walking. He had a fall and unbeknownst to me at the time, he fractured his ankle. But the fracture in his ankle is what led to him being in the emergency room. The VA admitted him for the medical treatment, and still not a word about the benefits due the veteran. So the VA was unkind enough for a social worker to offer to send him to a shelter. She was angry at me expressing there was no safe discharge for a veteran, because as a fiduciary, not only to him as my husband, but to a veteran, to a vulnerable adult in Tennessee, there's a VAPIT team. The district attorney respects and expects that people will protect vulnerable Tennesseans. So based on that mandate, I contacted the VAPIT team and the district attorney.
You contacted whom?
It's called the VAPIT team. They protect vulnerable adults in Tennessee. It's a vulnerable adult protection. And they are working with the district attorney's office because that's what someone in a vulnerable position deserves. So although I'm calling to report on myself, the loyalty and the duty to the veteran still is the priority. That's the heart of it. So they came out and did their investigation, took images and things they need to do. But when he ended up in the VA again, and that social worker decided he could go to a shelter, that's when I decided I had to be different as a fiduciary. And I asserted myself differently. I advised her that there was no safe discharge. And then I escalated to the chief of social work because it was inappropriate to say that she would do that. My husband is a catastrophically disabled veteran.
Okay, so he's 100% categorized as 100% disabled, correct?
That's the challenge here. He's catastrophically disabled because a VA doctor looked at his condition, saw him bedridden, and decided his prognosis was such. The disconnect is that the VA doctor has nothing to do with the BBA except for filling out a form once the family learns that there is a form to be filled out.
What is the BBA?
The BBA is the Veterans Benefit Administration.
Okay.
The Veterans Benefit Administration, although it is a part of the VA, it is basically a separate secret door to the VA. If you are not aware that it is separate, and if you are simply expecting they're taking care of him, they know that he is unwell, they know that benefits are due, and they will do the right thing, that cannot be your position. 26 months later, the VA has not rated my husband 100%. They have not ever considered rating him. And that's the reason that injury has happened. The law says whether the family figures it out or not, the law says the VA is responsible. If a veteran is hospitalized for a period of 21 days or longer, the VA has the responsibility. It is known. There is not a question. So even if a veteran has not been rated, the overriding factor would be that they have been in hospital for 21 days, or in my husband's case, having had a stroke that was so extenuating, the VA could recognize from the beginning there would not be work. So both of those things were true. And with both of them being true, they still left the soldier behind. So I was forced into writing a writ of mandamus after exhausting every single remedy. I wrote to the Social Security Administration that there was a dire need for a soldier and a beneficiary of a trust. That was not responded to until maybe 2 days ago. I wrote to the VA and the BBA on the form that they expect you to find and send. No response until maybe 4 days ago. So all of the behavior showed me that somehow I prompted the fiduciary. But because they were responding and not wanting to admit they had failed the veteran, they simply responded with a haughty attitude rather than an expedited attitude to recover him. So when that was occurring, I decided to make certain that I'd exhausted every single remedy. So then I turned and I went to the offices of elected officials. I engaged them. I used the privacy form that constituents must use so that they can contact the agency on behalf of the constituent.
Who did you contact?
I contacted the offices of Senator Haggerty. I contacted the office of Senator Blackburn.
Wait a minute. When you contacted Senator Bill Haggerty's office, what was the response?
Okay, when I contacted Senator Bill Haggerty's office by phone, I didn't get a response. So I traveled down to the Odell Horton building and went to the 10th floor. At the 10th floor, where the marshals also reside, there is a doorbell. So I rang the doorbell and no one responded. So I was curious, if I could not get an answer on the phone and then no one was answering the doorbell, what was the remedy? But a lady walked up while I was there at the door and she pointed and told me that this office is only open by appointment. And I explained to her what I just said, and that is, I only came to the building because I could not call and make an appointment. She came in, she allowed me in, she provided me with the privacy form. She asked me if I'd already approached another elected official's office, and I told her that I had, and I continued completing the form out. She reminded me, or she advised me, if I'd contacted another office, I was the person who would be delaying a response by asking for so many offices to help. However, I was impressed that my husband's situation was emergent, and the more individuals that were saying, do not leave this veteran behind, it would be better. So I called back to the office after I left her the form, and I expressed that to her because I wanted her to understand that I heard her and I was not ignoring her understanding of the process. I was just pleading and advocating for my husband in the best way possible. So she said, okay, and she disconnected the call. She sent an email to me maybe 3 or 4 days later, and the email said to me that she had contacted the agencies on my behalf, the VA, and the VA responded that I need to file a claim. And I've not heard from her since that time. The data that I provided her with was a lot more than the data that I provided her with were the 38 USC codes, because I did not want Senator Haggerty's office to not be aware that the agencies were actively violating those codes and I not have notified them. So her response to me was just very generic. I mean, their response was very generic, and there is no idea that I come after 26 months and simply had not filed a complaint. So it was a tactic that I think is being used by an agency that hasn't done their due diligence, hasn't done their work towards the veteran, and then they just say start over. But in the VA situation, there is no starting over like that because the benefit is tied to the date of injury. So my husband has a vested right that is being ignored, which really comes to be a constitutional injury. which is also why I wanted to be sure I'd exhausted the remedies by reaching out to the elected officials who will recognize this as a constitutional injury. To
And an
hold
emergency. I have two other questions I want to ask you. I'm sorry. Who else did you contact, and what was the response to you from the elected officials?
Okay. The second office contacted, and I may not be giving these in order because I'm not as orderly right now, but I contacted Senator Blackburn's office, and I was able to speak with a lady in the office. I can't recall her name, but it was a relief when I spoke with her. She was so kind to offer and say that she may contact her husband to see if he could provide a home that they had so that I could retrieve my husband from this facility that he's in unnecessarily and I not be homeless. So I went to bed that night feeling grateful. I woke up, I traveled to downtown, 100 Peabody Place, where the senator's office is. Beautiful foyer, no chairs. I had a surgery recently, so my right foot is still impacted, but I stood for 45 minutes in the lobby, and the appointment was a no-show. It was a no call. I had the cell phone, and the fact that I was parked downtown on a meter that only allowed 1 hour meant that I needed to exit the building so that I wouldn't compound the matter and come out to a tow or a boot. So the security guard had already attempted to call the staffer or the congressional liaison, and that was unsuccessful. However, when I was walking out of the door after a 45-minute wait, the security guard started yelling, "Hey, hey, hey, she's here." But I was curious because I didn't know how I'd missed her if I was still standing in the lobby. I just curious. But at any rate, I couldn't entertain her because I had to leave to get to the vehicle. And I left the privacy forum with the security guard and thanked her for her phone call and thanked her for calling me back. But I explained to her why I couldn't stay any longer. And I left. However, I have never heard from Senator Blackburn's office from that day to this day.
And
Uh,
who else?
the other office that I approached was the office of Congressman Cohen. And I approached Congressman Cohen's office. First, it was via email. My efforts to reach Congressman Cohen stem back for this situation to March of 2025 because the challenges that were happening, I could already see them coming because I have been standing in the gap between the VBA benefits. I was working remote for 40 hours a week while taking care of my husband around the clock. So when my agency retaliatorily rescinded a telework agreement, there were no earnings for me to buffer between the delay of the VBA anymore. So I contacted Congressman Cohen's office because I saw that happening and I knew what the cliff would be. It was just a matter of time before we resolved or we exhausted the savings that we had. So no response in March of 2025. I contacted again in January of July, November of 2025. So from March of 2025, I continued to do these caregiving. I know the office is busy, just expected someone would eventually get to the casework and reach out to us. No one did. I reached out again to the scheduler, requested a meeting, provided the names, addresses, being sure that the congressman's time was being spent on a constituent, and I didn't hear anything back. I had a neighbor who traveled to Washington, D.C., and like a pigeon, I wrote a note and I sent the note via the neighbor because that neighbor was having a meeting that involved Congressman Cohen. So I sent that note, and that neighbor sent me back a business card. And the business card had the name of staffers Wiley Henry and I think Willie Henry, maybe. I may be saying the names wrong. But because it was a business card with a name, after the note that I sent explaining the emergency, I felt so deflated. I didn't bother to contact them because I saw it as a toss off. One thing to be clear is that I have a history working on Capitol Hill, and I understand the movement and the momentum. And when a member wants something done, short of them doing it, they get it done. They don't pass you off to someone else who may or may not understand the urgency. So I took the card and I kept the card, but I did not bother the office. I just kept on hoping for the VA to not leave the veteran behind. Fast forward until February when the lights were turned off, he fell, he fractured, and that brought us to the emergency room. But I'm going to say this about Congressman Cohen's office. I went to the office because when this was happening, I sent the message again and I said, the thing that I was trying to meet you for has now manifested. We're in an emergency situation. I had an opportunity to meet with a gentleman by the name of Wiley Henry. It was maybe 10 days ago, I'm guessing. I met with him. I took him the entire packet of information, including my husband's DD 214, every one of the VA square fill in the forms that have to be faxed off. And I again thought if the representative's office would engage themselves in providing this to the VA would sense the urgency and not leave the veteran behind. However, Wiley Henry's response to me was intimated that I was being too hasty in asking for a resolution in 72 hours.
May
And
I interrupt you for a little bit?
you certainly can.
I was homeless in 2008. I was in constant contact with Congressman Cohen's office, trying to seek some type of remedy, seek some help through HUD. And Mr. Wiley Henry was assigned to my case, and his comment was always, "I'll get back with you. We're working on this. I'll get back with you."
The same person, the same person. And Congressman Cohen has retained him.
That mine was in 2008. So you're dealing with it now. You know, Hereford Jr., Hereford Sr., say what you want to about the Ford family. One of the things that people in this community realize that when they had problems and they needed help, they received a response, but not, I'm sorry if this is emotional to you. I apologize, but I learned what it was like to sleep in my car. And you are homeless now. They took your husband, placed him in a facility, and you are now homeless. And you're not getting help from Marsha Blackburn's office, from Bill Haggerty's office, neither Steve Cohen's office. And your husband is a veteran.
With you, based on what you just said to me, when I went into the office, I asked Wiley Henry, I said, will you please fax these documents off? Because I wanted to be able to take back to my husband the assurance that someone was doing something. And I wanted to just take him the basic fax cover receipt, the sheet. He said to me, we don't fax. And I said, thank you. I said, however it is you're going to send it, I'm simply asking for a proof so that I can take back to my husband and show him that someone is operating on his behalf. He provided me this letter. I don't know if you can see any of it.
I see the headline. I see the return address information. Yes.
But look at the lettering. Not even a letter to anyone. It's made out to some made up alphabet.
So it's generic.
It's no letter that would have been sent out to anyone. So when I look back at the letter, I realized that wasn't going out to anyone, but I still just waited to see if a response would come. He never responded to me. So I went ahead after contacting every one of the elected officials, and I drafted what would be a writ of mandamus. I'm no attorney, but I just drafted what would be a writ of mandamus to ask the VA, will you please step in and ask the VA or the VBA to not leave this soldier behind. When I wrote the writ of mandamus, I simply sent it off to the VA in Washington, D.C., because I just felt like locally there was nothing responsive. When I sent those certified letters off, I asked that they respond within 14 days, because again, this is an emergent situation. I know that my husband is not the only veteran that needs them. So I asked in 14 days. Nothing that I hear. On the 14th day, I received an email from the VA. And the email from the VA let me become aware that instead of responding that they were going to expedite the review and the conditions to have my husband returned home, the VA sent notice that they were assigning an attorney. So instead of doing what is due to my husband via his vested rights, the VA wants that a catastrophically disabled husband and a woman with no home to now litigate for vested rights. That's a constitutional injury.
That is change. If there's someone out there, one of my audience, somebody in my audience can help you, I placed your phone number and your name on the ticker. And I was just wondering, any of you guys out there who know someone who can help this veteran, please call Change at 901-707-2400. That's 901-707-2400. Our veterans do not need to have to be in this type of shape. Let me just ask you a quick question, and I'm going to close with this question.
Well, before I finish, let me close with this to tell you that I ended up, after I wrote the writ and had an attorney, I wanted to go back again because my business is to exhaust every remedy before going to the next step so that no one sends me back to finish the work. I went back to Congressman Cohen's office, asked if they had any response. I was met with quiet hostility, and Wiley Henry went and he retrieved a document that said much as the same as the person from Senator Haggerty's office, and that is that the veteran needs to file a claim. All of those things are ruses because there are BSO officers, there are medical professionals, and all of them know that there is a claim that has already been filed. There is 2 claims that have been filed. So the telling to file a claim again is to avoid the true date, which is January 14th of 2024. And I'll listen to you now, Shah.
That was 13 months ago that Congressman Cohen has ignored you. And I just want to reiterate, her husband has been taken away from her and placed in a facility, and she is currently homeless. But I also want to praise her because her husband has had reoccurring incidences like this before, and she has been the primary caregiver to actually help him to be able to walk again. Did you want to discuss with them what exactly his issue is?
Okay, he suffered a major stroke in 2024, and then that left him with residual active seizure disorder. So he's very sensitive in that way to having seizures and reoccurrences of strokes. His threshold is very low. So his sister and I have been the primary people that worked getting him back grounded on land. If there were not things that the VA, no one recommended it. There were things that we just knew to do instinctively, intuitively. So using his own weight, his own body, a wheelchair, we would take him out, take him into grass, let him put his bare feet into the land, things like that. And 6 months later, he could stand on those feet again. So that prognosis was not expected. And he is still he's still getting stronger every day. So I focus on that aspect of it. He is still getting stronger every day. He is still dependent and all of that, but it is a highlight to see his determination. And he still smiles as brightly as he ever smiled. Right now, he is somewhere smiling. And that to me is the best part. And that's why I am asserting myself, because I will not let someone break his mind.
That is so sweet. And I just want to say this. Um, you said his illness is not related to post-traumatic stress disorder,
It is not.
but you never can tell when someone is dealing, have served in combat, has experienced disasters or abuse or traumatic events or life-threatening issues. When someone has witnessed that, especially in combat, one never knows just when it's going to take effect.
You're right. And I'm going to say this. My husband has art, he has articulated that this experience has been more traumatizing than the things he experienced in service. In service, he had buddies. He had buddies that he could count on, that he trusted. They would not leave him behind. Becoming a veteran and experiencing this, he says, has been more traumatic than anything he experienced in service. That's a big deal for me to hear.
Wow. Wow, change. I'm going to put your contact information back up there. If anybody knows of anyone that can help to direct change to the appropriate offices that will step in and help her to get some emergency care for herself and her husband, please call her and let her know. I've enjoyed doing this video.
I want to say this before I go. Anyone who's also calling me can ask me to so that they can learn how to be a better fiduciary. It's what we all have a responsibility one to the other for, including holding those who are at a high level with fiduciary responsibility responsible.
Now, your husband served in the military for 20 years in the Air Force. Did I understand that correctly?
No, he only served for 4 years. His dedication was in aviation. He got out and worked. He worked as an aviation mechanic within the Air Force, and he got out and he dedicated his 40 years to that. And he retired from Boeing at the end. His plan was to come back home and build veterans land. He purchased the land for it. We have the business plans for it. This is just an interruption. And the shame of it is that in the year of Operation Epic Fury, we're holding on to a business plan for veterans land, and the VA is asking us to be in court. It's a very ironic situation.
That sounds very insensitive. I also want to ask you if you have had an opportunity, if you have received the guidance you need to apply for some of the veteran benefits, for instance, aid and attendance. That helps both the.
Everything that was in the packet that I presented to Congressman Cohen's office, every form that the VA required, I made sure that no one could say I had not presented it. I presented it to Congressman Cohen's office specifically for that reason. I did not present the entire packet to another office, but because I'd already contacted Congressman Cohen in March and in November regarding the matter, I thought it was the appropriate that his office have what the meeting would have been about. So I presented them with every packet. And the other thing is, if the VA is aware of the writ of mandamus, the appropriate humane thing would have been to just expedite getting my husband out of that facility. They chose to not show any fault, any delay fault, just take the veteran to court.
I'm glad you're exposing this. And so many people that are out there are probably having some of the similar
Oh, I'm sure.
problems or pushback. But this needs to be exposed. So thank you for joining us today, Change. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Appreciate knowing you because I have seen you actively fight and bring your husband back from the brink of death
Thank God.
to
Yes.
someone who could walk again with the aid of a walker. God
Yep.
bless you for women like yourself who support their husband. And I tell you, I want to see you guys healthy.
Keep your eyes open. Just keep your eyes open.
Okay. Tell people again how they can get in contact with you if they know of someone who could probably prod the various elected officials to tell them to get on the ball to provide you guys with the help you need. Your husband deserves better.
Okay, our email address is cdoty707 choose. What it stands for is cdoty 707 as an SOS and choose at gmail.com. The phone is 901-707-2400. Again, 707-2400.
Give me that email address again. CDoty
707 CHOOSE at gmail.com.
I'm hoping that there is someone out there who has information and they can help you. Okay, there is the email address. Please copy it, you guys. Thank you all for joining us. This has been a heartfelt story, and I wanted you guys to hear it. And I wanted you guys to help, if you can, to come up with some type of solution, even if it's no more than calling the respective elected official and let them know there's a veteran out there that is helping. Now you need to put your action where your mouth is, indicating that you care.
Send Bo a happy email. It's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much, and God bless you, and thank you for joining us today. I look forward to talking to you in the near future. Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye.